have procedurally for this morning to get us started, the changes we asked council to make yesterday are reflected in the draft that's just been distributed to everyone as instances of amendment, as they're few, and otherwise we'd have a new 170 page-ish bill in front of us, so it'll be economical. So I thought we'd start with going through that. I also wanted to thank people that chipped in. We have a punch list, so I was gonna hand that back out to people. Also, we've received pieces of language from different folks. We'll go through copies of that, so we'll go through hard copies of other things that are open. For instance, there was one at my request, Mr. Collier looked into one other issue related to accessory on-farm businesses, and that was the response to people at home who've been talking to me on behalf of Salvation Farms and others who engage in gleaning.
Yep.
And there is some legal hiccup that relates to how gleaning can and cannot be done. So if it's something we can take care of in a modest and reasonable way while we're here, great. Otherwise, we just stick to the accessory on business maintenance we looked like yesterday. So with that, let's go over what we talked about yesterday. You can walk us through this.
Sure, Ellen Tchaikovsky, the Office of Legislative Counsel. Today, what I brought for you to review is draft 1.1 of the Bray amendment. It is going to be a floor amendment, so it is not actually from the committee. Anyone else can add their name to it, but this is what you discussed in committee yesterday. So it is just, as Senator Bray mentioned, it is just instance by instance. For economy's sake, because of, carrying around all these big documents is very heavy. So on the first page, the first instance of amendment is adding housing to the purpose section of Act 250. So it just is that small change from yesterday. So the purposes of this chapter are to protect and conserve the environment while supporting equitable access to infrastructure, including housing.
But does everyone have a copy of the so-called punch list? Anyone needs one? Let me have a seat. Yes. And Cameron, do you have this one?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Please.
The second instance of amendment is the accessory on-farm business language. So the first is amending the definition in Title 24, striking the word accessory, adding the revenues of which may exceed the revenues of the farming operation. Then on page 2, it strikes based within the state, so it's.
I'm sorry, I'm going to pause just for the sake of being methodical from the get-go. So everyone, we should sort of, we're paint our way out of the room mode. So everyone fine on that first change, first instance?
Yep.
I'll give it up.
Including housing, right.
It's not very controversial, but
Go ahead.
it's one of these, and let's check them as we go. Thank you.
Right, so the next section is amending accessory on-farm business. The change in the on page 1 isn't highlighted at all because this is the language that came over from the House. On page 2, though, as you heard in some of the testimonies, there is a change being made on line 6 in this definition. And so it's striking the baked within the state, so now it's just the sale of bread or baked goods. And then additionally, wholly is being struck and is not being replaced with principally.
And everyone good on these changes?
I'm
They're down.
looking behind you, on the farm businesses. But is it accurate to say that farmers who live in the dwelling of their farms, that dwelling, that house is treated differently for tax purposes to other people who live in houses?
Just the house.
I don't know, that has been, I believe that still, even if you're on a farm, you still have your.
They're not, and it is still taxed the same as any other homestead.
Believe so, sure. We can check with Mr. Keaton or something, yeah.
And when it comes to current use.
We're making you trouble.
How I would say it's definition of farmers and stuff.
That, that's, I wouldn't wanna try to answer that one because there's some intricacies to it that I might not get right, so maybe would need counsel, but look at current,
Perhaps
how that will be defined.
to be a double check to make sure that. There's somewhere in there something about getting your revenues. On which someone lives as a result of farming. And if you're making more revenues from not farming, because it's a business that happens to be on the farm. Have you rendered yourself ineligible for something? Are you no longer a farmer because you are in the majority of your income is a business that's not farming? Is this also falling off the truck without us knowing? Yeah. As opposed to when they fall off the truck and people know.
Well, I think that's an interesting question.
So, I mean, in terms of
Land use.
is it Michael O'Grady that knows that piece of law? So we ask him.
Potentially recurring use, yeah, it might or Kirby. All that I know is that to be a farm under this program, you need to be regulated by the required agricultural practices. That does have a threshold by which you sell or raise products on the farm, and so. That probably would not be impacted by this, but you're asking a different question that I don't have the answer to.
Well, and I'm also trying to replace probably this maybe more that has more.
Sure.
So
Adverbs, you know.
I'll reach out to Mr. O'Grady and ask him if he can come by this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Can you ask Michael if he can swing by?
Yeah.
Really,
One time now or?
now or anytime, just get in for a consultation, I don't think it's full page. So every time after 9:30.
Warn him, what are you?
Okay, so
He's busy from 9:30 to 12. In the house chamber, feedback, what house chamber?
if
Oh, wait, that's the wrong person, sorry.
if he can come by,
He's got. two
great,
things.
otherwise, I'll do offline research. And see what we get.
It looks like you're gonna have to be this.
The other thing is, it's a good question, and also for context, this is, we were talking about municipal law. So it's not the Act 250 implication, so it's kind of just, doesn't answer your question. Okay. So I'm gonna mark this as, I believe we are good to go, and we should get more information.
On page 2. The processing and sale of qualifying products provided, et cetera. Is there people who sell stuff often sell stuff, some t-shirts, they sell hats, they sell knickknacks and all that stuff, how does that fit into a on-farm business? What if I make more money selling t-shirts and sweatshirts than I make selling sweet potatoes? And breadfruit.
Where there's some language about that, of course, you six.
Yep.
I don't know if that addresses what you're thinking about.
Well, what if this be silly, what if 90% of your sales are the picture postcards that you sell?
Okay.
So that for every purposes, people don't mail it anymore.
Yeah, that's in here, that's allowed,
It's allowed.
under this new
So
language.
how did the taking of the plant the little drop of power, or she planted a little plant, all of a sudden, it has become something that wasn't planted. What's the? This is done under the name of farming, agriculture, but it appears to me once you get into it, it's unlimited in what you can do and what you can sell. Is that correct? I mean, as long as it's not.
Yeah, I mean, there is some language that the merchandise is supposed to, promote the farm as a business. So perhaps not all the knickknacks.
But it's.
Yes.
But still, it's.
Well, the next
But
section
yes, I think-
addresses income. The next section, there's some income qualifications in the Act 250 section that follows, correct?
And. I mean, for processing,
Yeah.
but not just for like selling stuff.
You're worried that under the guise of being an on-farm business, it could sell everything under the sun, and that might be $1 million worth of business, and the peas will bring in $300 a year, and so we have is it something like that?
They had to bring in $2,000.
Or what in here prohibits the excellent example you just,
Nothing.
You're thinking about the New York laws with the big disgusting bottom.
Maybe.
That no one
Oh.
orders. So now they're a restaurant, I think it's so awkward.
Yeah,
But nothing does prohibit that. This is a policy decision, if I'm understanding correctly.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah, we don't have anything in here. I think that risk is real and warranted, but unlikely.
But, I mean, it is probably already happening to some extent.
True, but.
it's already happening.
But how rampant of an issue is this? That we are unwilling to allow some grace for people who do farm, who probably as a tradition, it is a Vermont tradition to do Old Home Day to get your farm to survive. That is a long-standing tradition where you bring people and you sell them something and you keep your farm going. And so I'm so appreciative you bringing up this point. I think if we're going to make changes to this language to address that, we will be making a different directional choice.
Well. If it becomes successful, what's gonna keep it from being franchised? To anybody who wants to buy a piece of the franchise.
It does have to be on a farm.
Well, once you've got the successfully farm business. You now have evidence that it's a farm. Cause if it wasn't a farm, you couldn't have it.
Well, you could just have to get all your permits.
Yeah.
You just don't get the exemption,
Yeah.
nothing stopping.
But yes, every location has to be located on a farm. As regulated by the regs.
mean, there are bad actors, you're not wrong. We've had situations in our communities where there have been people who have misused already the laws that we have in place. But that doesn't, I think, warrant
We're-
us limiting the
We're
very.
helping them
real-
diversify their misuse.
I'd much rather it stay a farm. As much as it possibly could, if they have to sell sweatshirts.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I've suffered from being around here too long. And when, you know, my memory of the legislature was you tried to figure out what would be good policy. And that was hard work and you had to do what you had to do. And now the creativity goes into how do we exempt people from the good policy that we established? And we knowingly do that and say, yeah, they're bad actors and we're going to pass this, and we know there'll be more bad.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't know if I would quite characterize it that way, but. This is an exemption. This is provision that says you can't prohibit such a business at a farm. From the municipalities.
If it requires the things that Act 250 requires or local zoning requires. We're saying that Act 250 and the local zoning won't apply to farms. We're trying to do something on farms. That apparently we need the law to say can be done, because currently without the law. It can't be done. It may not be done.
It can be done.
So why do we need the law?
Well, we're not talking about whether or not they can do it, we're talking about whether or not they get out of 1950s.
That's the second half. So the first half is, can a municipality. Have no bylaw shall have the effect of prohibiting an accessory on farm buildings at the same location as a farm. So I believe that the rub has been that farms that try to have an accessory on farm business in the municipal regulations. I don't know if they outright prohibit it or make it so difficult that it's virtually unachievable. I don't know the ins and outs of what kind of municipal laws have been applied in what ways in order to sort of de facto prohibit.
Okay, and so just to be clear, this statute was passed in 2018, the amendment before you, does a few different things to that system that's already been in place. So yes, municipalities have already been limited from, prohibiting businesses. This is going farther and broadening what they include. Previously, they were required to be selling at least 50% of the things they were selling were coming from their farm. It's getting rid of that limitation. They keep from any farm. And it's adding sale of t-shirts and such and baked goods.
This is sort of permitting it to be like a retail outlet. Which in a place where we
Yes.
don't permit, where the current system doesn't facilitate or encourage or prohibits retail outlets from being constructed with the things that they're required to have, like parking and bathrooms, hot water or lights or whatever. And we're doing this for the reason of housing people.
That's a, no, it's a question.
Why are we doing it?
We're doing it because it's been an issue that's been this is an opportunity to address an issue that's come up. We're doing a lot of things that really planning and zoning and what kind of activities can occur. I mean, for instance, there's commercial activities allowed elsewhere in the bill.
But this is a housing bill. And we have
Well,
laws that we have laws that carry out what we believe is. And we're changing this to
This is too much water.
cater to
Take
opportunities. It gives opportunities to opportunists.
We're gonna,
I'll just say this did, some of this came over from the House in this section, so it wasn't a housing bill in the House, it was an Act 250-ish bill, so. I'm not disagreeing.
Council, I've in inappropriately asking you to answer a question about the policy. Which is unfair and of me to ask. We're changing policy and you're explaining to us. How the language makes the changes, which. Apparently is on this bill that has to do with,
That came, thank you for the reminder, it's an Act 250 bill, 687 came from the House, it addressed. Things related to Act 250 and adjacent, and that is the very next section, an Act 250 provision related to the aids. And meanwhile, the Agency of Agriculture, as well as the NRC and others pointed out that there's a municipal counterpart that also impinges on the ability or directs or something accessory on-farm businesses. So while addressing the Act 50 piece, there was the House decided, let's also address the municipal piece that lives sort of side by side.
and we're saying that's a good idea, we can make it, we're changing the language to make. What they're setting out to do work better than they possibly come up with so far.
Well, I would like to think so, we're making adjustments to that thing. So let's mark the first half of this as something to learn more about. And you can mull it over whether or not it seems like a desirable change or not. Let's go on to 23B. So we look at the Act 50 portion of the same thing.
Thank you for indulging.
Yes, sorry, it's a fair question.
Well-
Sure.
And because this is a floor amendment. This can be divided into as many pieces as you want, and people can sign on or not. If they want.
Oh, good, thanks. Yes. This is not a committee amendment, individually, so.
Great. Next is the related section, this is the language. That this hasn't changed from your prior discussions. So, it's an exemption for on-farm business, for the storage and sale of qualifying products. And then, permanent exemption for, preparation and processing of qualifying products, provided that more than 50% of the total annual sales of prepared or processed qualifying products come from products produced on the farm where the business is located. But it is not an exemption for the events, hosting of events on the farm.
Okay, any questions on this one?
I am not. So it's not highlighted?
Nothing's highlighted here because this is the language, this language has not changed at all, and this, I believe this is the language that came over from the House. But given that I've written many drafts, of this, I can choose.
I don't think we,
Okay. Okay, thank you, I'm good.
This is the language that came over from the House.
and Senator McCown, to your point about, tails wagging dogs, I think that's in this section, the lines 5 through 7. Try to keep the dog wagging the tail. Or he's a balanced position.
Or if you said page.
Page 3, that provided more than 50% of the total annual sales of prepared processed qualifying products come from products produced on the farm where the business is located.
So when your t-shirts and hats have numbers, what you just mentioned, you're not a compliant.
Yes.
So processing is one thing, qualifying products back on the list of qualifying products is the one in this section. Senator Watson?
Oh, no, I just wondered if Savannah had raised her hand.
Oh, because I'm doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just,
Okay,
I'm here, I'm just fidgeting, sorry.
no worries, curious.
Pain reaction.
Or it's a secret Santa.
Okay, so the qualifying list includes merchandise or apparel that features a farm or accessory on farm business.
No, so I'll just say.
And what's going on with the cross-reference to qualifying products?
So qualifying products is a defined term that are agricultural products, they are not t-shirt. So it's on the line 1 of page 3. So there's a full exemption for the sale of qualifying products for the other eligible enumerated products, which are the t-shirts and the baked goods. Because qualifying products are grown or raised on the farm, and obviously the t-shirts are not, their own price. There is no percentage threshold that they have to, so there is not a limitation.
Once you're selling other qualified agricultural products, you agree on a ticket to ride for t-shirts and the hats, and all that kind of stuff.
It actually doesn't require you to sell anything necessarily from your farm.
Mr. Collier.
Senator Bray, how are you?
I don't know if you were watching a stream or.
No, I just have friends.
Or. Better rival heirs every time, so.
If you're not required to sell stuff from your farm, which is what got you in the door to be able to have this place that sells stuff. But you're not required to sell stuff that's on your farm, comes from your farm. What's the connection between being a farmer and being able to be permitted to sell the stuff you grow on your farm and stuff on your neighbor's farm? But you don't have to sell on your stuff. You can sell the t-shirts and the hats and whatever. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's the end result of what this language says.
Yeah.
But when it was being marketed to us, it seemed to have an agricultural connection.
So,
Which is, what am I missing here?
yeah, so let's see if I can ask Mr. Collier, we can just do this on the fly.
Sure.
I thought we were all set yesterday, apparently we are not, and so the question that's coming up is. Let me see if I'm getting it right. Someone could buy a farm. And then. Or a subject to REPs, I don't know what degree they have to continue to operate it as a farm, but they. I think the concern is now, the municipal exemption means that. You're gonna be able to have an accessory on-farm business, you could be subject to some municipal law, but they can't in effect prohibit. That accessory on-farm business from being created. The revenues of it can exceed the revenues of the farming operation itself, so. I need to say I bought a farm and. I'm gonna plant an acre of vegetables somewhere nearby. The other operations they're gonna cease. Now I have my accessory on-farm business. And I start selling stuff and I can sell without limit. All the things that we have in this list, you can have. There's all the qualifying products, and then there's also products that name describe promote the farm. For accessory on-farm business, including merchandise or apparel. And branded goods. So those all seem pretty farm related, but. Does it, is there any limitation on what else you're gonna be able to sell, in that business? And I start selling chewing gum and. Who knows, but it's jumper cables.
So Senator Bray, Steve Collier from the Agriculture, the answer to your question is no. You can only sell the things that are specifically enumerated. And first, as a tie, you have to be a farm. You can't just, you can't just be a business on a commercial lot. To be an accessory on farm business, you have to be a farm. And that means that you have to be farming. And so, yes, this provision would allow a farm to sell other farms' products. You could also sell a t-shirt or hat advertising your business. And if you're making food, then you have to make at least half of the value or the proceeds of that food on your own farm. So this is just to help farmers sell food.
I'm not questioning the list purpose.
Yeah,
I started a chive farm and that's what I grew.
sure.
How many hats and t-shirts and things could I sell from Mexico and China and Vietnam? While along with my homegrown chives.
I think you'd have trouble getting any people to your farm stand if you only sold chives. But if you sold chives.
I sell. You should sell.
But you could
It
sell,
has nothing to do with chives.
but you could sell just as many chive t-shirts as consumers would buy, and I doubt that would be very many, but you could sell a lot of chive t-shirts and a lot of chive hats. But you still have to be a farm producing chives. And you could sell a t-shirt or a mug with your farm on it, and if you could do that to support your farm, that'd be great.
Or a recliner or
Recliner with your name on it, I mean, you could try. Maybe a chive and a hammock made out of chive, I don't know.
I think it's music and chive, okay, so one.
Thank you. I was trying to think about this, like, how big a door are we opening? How big a truck can you drive through it,
Yeah.
right? And so. Because it's prohibiting the municipalities from regulating accessory on farm businesses, right?
No,
Oh.
it doesn't allow towns to prohibit them. But they can absolutely do very extensive regulation if they want. They can do site plan review, which is everything to do with
Oh,
where the
okay.
building goes.
Oh,
And
okay.
performance standards, which is hours of operation, noise, lighting, they can do all of that if they want.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah,
Right, so
yeah.
they can't prohibit it, but they
Right.
can regulate it.
Absolutely, just like any other
Okay,
business.
That makes sense. The example that comes to mind for me is like, if somebody wanted to, bottle water.
Yeah.
From their site and then ship it, right? Like, would that be, an enumerated?
I don't think it's a qualifying product, because
Okay,
it has to be something produced on a farm.
Yeah,
Or something that advertises the farm.
okay,
So bottled water, I mean, that's not, to me, that's not a farm commodity. Somebody might argue differently, but I don't think.
well, that's what I suspected, but I wanted to check because it said something like, I'm not looking at it exactly right now, but like raised or grown, like when you're not raising or growing the water, so.
Right.
But that's the kind of activity I would worry about in the future, if somebody just.
I don't think that's, I mean, the Superior Court already talked about, and there's a series of whistle pig cases that came up under Act 50, sorry, just came. Is that for yesterday?
We're having a hold down on accessory on farm businesses.
So I think under Superior Court precedent, not that that's binding, but still, water wouldn't be considered an ag commodity anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
I remember the time period when there was a lot of news about people banning Vermont air and selling it as a novelty.
Was that the commune or was that?
I'm serious.
Okay,
I think
okay.
some people are probably,
Yeah.
I remember that and I think I went. And it was saying, what's this? The official water of the Jive Farm used to, I'm being silly, but I think this bill is a bit silly.
Why, Senator? What's silly about farms helping each other and selling their food?
Nothing.
That's what
Where have all the t-shirts and the hats and the water that's the official water of the Jive Farm and Vermont Air and Chase lounges to watch stuff grow. What is the limit?
Well, the water and the air is not listed as an enumerated product. The t-shirts and the hats and things that were advertised are listed because there are farms that currently operate under municipal law that try to sell other merchandise, and they were asking us, can we do this? And we said, under the law, no, you can't. But no one seemed to mind if they're trying to, if they have a stand and they wanna sell a t-shirt, a lot of people do it, it's another source of income. That's the whole point of this bill, Senator, is to keep farms viable. And if they don't have income streams, they don't operate and they sell their land and it's no longer used for farming. So you can think about the exception, or you can think about the rule, and the rule is, do we want farms in Vermont?
I don't disagree with you. Yeah. You could put all the stuff that I listed in a truck and take it to the farmer's market and sell it. The question now is, can you sell this and the other paraphernalia on your farm? And who knows, it may end up making more money than the actual farming. But
Maybe, although I think people go to the farm stand to buy the food, so I don't think they go to buy a t-shirt, but when they're there, they might walk out with a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. And you might have a 50% markup on that instead of a 10% markup on the food, so yeah, it might help. But if you really don't want them to sell a t-shirt, that's not what the goal of the bill is. The goal of the bill is to allow farms to sell each other's food. If you want them to take out t-shirts, I mean, that's.
the goal of this bill has to do with Act 250 and development and housing, and now we're being told that you're suggesting that the goal of the bill is something other than is what has been advertised as the goal, the bill and current law.
Well, to be,
And I'm asking questions and I'm surprised at the answers that are being given. Because it seems to not be connected with housing, Act 250 development, downtowns, compact areas, and we're contradicting what we say we believe in.
the House sent,
We do that often, yes.
the House sent the bill with it in,
Yeah,
right? So it's germane. Right, let's just.
yes, it's germane.
And, while we have Mr. O'Grady, you asked a question about what are the tax implications of being a farm in current use, and could such an accessory on-farm business, I don't know, get you chucked out of current use or something like that. Do you want to ask that question of Mr. O'Grady while he's visiting with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for yes. Mr. O'Grady. This is being, these proposed laws have to do with what takes place on farms. And farms are defined, I guess, seeing operations are operated by farmers, is that correct?
So I don't know, I was just trying to look at 8687, the amendment that's on the committees. I did not see any amendment to current use, so.
Yeah.
The criteria for current use will remain the same, and that means it has to be agricultural land. Which means it's an active use to grow hay, cultivated crops, pasture, livestock, cultivate trees, bearing edible fruit, produce an annual maple product. It doesn't, as far as I know, no one's amended this for the purposes of accessory and on-farm businesses. So what the assessors will do, they will go out and assess whether or not the portions of the property that are used for the accessory on-farm use qualifies ag land or not, and if it does not, they will be assessed at the fair market value for the land.
There's anything about the land, the growing those crops being a contributing certain amount of a threshold of income
You gotta be a farmer.
is defined by.
So first, the ag land has to, if it's 25 it either needs to be 25 acres or more in size. Or if it's less than that, it's owned by a farmer. And it's produced an annual gross income from the sale of farm crops in 1 of 2 or 3 of the 5 calendar years. Proceeding of at least $2,000 for parcels of up to 25 acres and $75 per acre for each acre over 25. I can tell you what a farmer is. Wait a second, basically you have to meet the, you earn at least 1/2 of the farmer's annual gross income from business of farming, is that term is defined by the IRS, or produces farm crops that are processed at the farm facility situated on land enrolled by the farmer and use value appraisal program on a house site adjoining Gila Grande. federal ban. Gross income from the sale of processed farm products. When added to other gross income from the business of farming, equals at least 1/2 of the farmer's annual gross income. And who produces on the farm a minimum of 75% of the farm crops processed in the farm facility. Doesn't sound like any of these accessory on farm businesses are going to qualify for that. Maybe they're processing 75% of what's being processed at that facility. And they're getting 50% of their income from farming, maybe. But it's not ag land to begin with. So it could be assessed at fair market value. And then there was a question in the email whether or not it was going to be assessed as merchandise. I don't really understand that. Is the product? Is that what your question is?
My question is to understand what's going on. So you've been very helpful so far.
I don't think many of the products would qualify for sales tax exemptions, if that's what you're asking. Asking correctly.
So the land owned by a farmer. That produces. What is 50% of revenue for what couple thousand dollars of crops in the way of hay within.
Right,
How many of recent years as defined by the IRS?
right, but it's, I think the important criteria is it has to be ag land. So it has to be used to grow hay or cultivated crops. Accessory on farm businesses are not hay or cultivated crops. It has to be used to pasture livestock, which accessory on farm businesses likely will not. And it has to be used to cultivate trees bearing edible fruit. Or it has to produce an annual maple product. So that is not in any of these accessory on farm businesses.
Any other questions for council?
No, I'm trying to process all this.
So this committee has looked at an example of this in the Ag 250 context. From Vermont Compost. Vermont Compost was renting a facility on a farm. And the assessor went in and said, everything except what is being used by Vermont Compost is farming. But what Vermont Compost is doing is not farming. Because he wasn't on his farm. And he wasn't using 50% of the inputs for his processing from his farm. And therefore it wasn't farming, and it was assessed at fair market value. And he was told to get an acquisition.
This is the one that over.
The one, this is the East Montpelier site, not the Montpelier. Now Carl is gonna mysteriously appear whenever his name is said.
You said it out loud, then we go, I hear that.
Groundwater study of dinner, septic system. You're not posting Machu Picchu.
Okay, Machu Picchu, okay. Thank you, Machu Picchu, that's my cue to like say, okay, are we ready to move on? So honestly, thank you for coming in, Mr. O'Grady. Thank you, Mr. Pollard, for appearing. Let's straw poll our way forward. Review, who is content with the language we have in front of us to go into our committee amendments or amendments individual center.
Say that one more time.
Who is straw polling, are people all set with this section or not? And if you're fine with the language we have, please say aye, lift your hand. If you're opposed to the language we have, please say nay. Okay, there's a nay. Now, McCormick, are you voting today?
Straw poll.
It's a straw poll. We have to assemble amendment.
Yeah, then I can abstain. Not allowed constitutionally to abstain.
Okay, yeah.
No, because I'm still torn, I haven't worked out.
Okay, so how about this? It's for the moment, those voting, is enough to keep it in. If you, I honestly, I'm mean this genuinely, if you think about it some more, find a wrinkle. Please bring it back to the committee. We probably aren't having a final vote on this bill till the middle of next week. It's Friday, so. So there will be time to do homework and come back with more questions,
Mr. Chair,
information.
thank you for taking the time and for having staff come down and trying to work their way through what this says and what it doesn't say. It's appreciated and it's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's sometimes a challenge when we come up with so many interesting questions as we get close to the finish line, but I appreciate the spirit in which they're offering. So we'll honestly, if you can keep churning and ruminating on it and come back with, there's other questions, let's get through them. So we're up to the third instance on page 3.
Yes, so. You didn't actually look at this language yesterday, so it was. New to me, but this was the recommendation from Zach Hale. So the third instance of amendment is amending 24 DSA 4412. Related to quadruplexes. So on page 4, the language is in yellow. So it would be actually replacing language that is in the bill currently. So in any district, so any zoning district that is served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure, which is a defined term in this section. That allows residential development, multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be permitted. A permitted use. And the established lot size for a single unit dwelling shall be sufficient for up to 4 dwelling units. Such that no more than 1/5 of an acre shall be required. Unless that district specifically requires multi-unit structures to have more than 4 dwelling units.
Senator Watson, I think you had flagged this for something for the committee to look at, so here we are. Can you guide us through what you were thinking about that? Maybe you want to bring it back up?
Yeah, well, so from the testimony from Mr. Hale, he was saying that the language as it was currently was being applied perhaps in a way that not the intent of what we were thinking. So this language is meant to clarify that and.
So just so I can get it, did you work with council on this is what's in yellow is
Was what,
changes,
yes, this is what,
following up in your
Zach-
correspondence and testimony? Yeah.
yes, this is what Zach Hale had proposed.
Yeah.
So, to be fair, I'm also digesting it.
Right, and it didn't come directly from Senator Watson. Yesterday in your discussion, you all directed me, it's on my list.
Yeah.
So, we did not discuss it in committee yesterday, you just told me to put it up, which is ready,
Well, it
so.
was a way to ensure that we
Yeah.
had it in front of there in black and white, so we could have a conversation, get to a resolution on it.
So I'm not. Wedded to this language, I think it's worth acting, see if it makes sense.
But Mr. Chair, conceptually, it's to make sure that when someone is quadruplexing, that they are allowed to do that. And that a municipality can't say, no, you actually can't. And that's because we've had believed misinterpretations of the homes bill. Which allows for that quadruplexing, but certain communities have not felt that it's true, or their interpretation has said that they don't need to allow for that. Is that, and do you feel that this actually does correct that way to resolve it, or was it fine before and it's more that towns were misinterpreting it?
I don't have an opinion on this.
And there's not someone else with like a legal There's not like another person who would be that person, you would be that person. Okay.
There wasn't?
And the way I read this is that if you can have a single unit dwelling, then you can make it, or you can quadruplex it, as long as it doesn't take up more than a fifth of an acre. Is that how you would interpret what it means?
So this is about lot size, so municipalities could set minimum lot size for dwellings, and so this, I think, is saying that the lot size they set for single unit, So listen, I just saw this for the first time last night. Sufficient makes me a little confused, but I think the intent is to put 4 units on the same size parcel that is required for a single family dwelling. So I have heard that there is confusion in the municipalities about this. I am not, I do not currently have an opinion. I am the attorney that would, this is a very complicated area and it is replacing language that came from Senate Economic Development that I also wasn't sure was actually gonna fix the problem. So I do think additional input on this is needed.
Yeah.
So
It's gonna be trickier here representing RPC, so you're not necessarily a municipal planner, but I'm guessing. Who is, I wrote down margin here, VLCT to check in with them, but who else is like a housing / municipal planning authority that we can talk to about figuring out the repercussions for making this happen?
I think that VLCT has probably already made their opinion on this known. So to me, it's you're faced with more of a policy question if you are satisfied with the policy question that the intent is that quadplexes should be allowed on the same size lot as single family units, then that's a policy question, is just making sure the language aligns.
But we do allow that already, like when you say it's a policy question, it's already what we.
I think that that is the intent of the whole package.
Okay,
Yes,
but there are truly people saying that that's not the intent.
there are people who do not think the language says that. I don't necessarily agree with that interpretation.
Yes.
But I think that there is enough question that clarifying that intent would be helpful. I'm not sure that this language accomplishes that. But like Ellen said, I'm just looking at it now too, so.
One thing that I like about this new language is the old language says on lots that are at least a third of an acre, et cetera, right? So you could probably require a larger lot size. And this language says, means no more than a fifth of an acre shall be required, right? So, think if you're gonna do this, they can't require that it be on a bigger parcel. So in my mind, that's a requirement to keep it dense. And it is a little weird that it's the size doesn't match, you know, a third of an acre versus a fifth of an acre. That seems like a change, but
that was what came out of Senate Economic Development, and it doesn't line up with the next section, which is, so,
okay.
yeah.
What's the do you mean the next section, like where it says 12 on line 15?
Yeah. So, well, but. Can I just, I have nothing else to add.
If it doesn't work,
I don't know that it doesn't work, but
Okay.
honestly, when I was writing this at 7:45 PM last night or whatever it was, I was working, I don't have an answer right now.
Okay, that's okay.
This is a complicated area of
Yeah.
the law already, and clarifying it is probably helpful.
Mhm. But it may not.
I mean, I'm not saying.
You don't-
At the moment, the only issue I have with the word is sufficient, but I am not saying
Oh.
I agree with that.
Oh.
Sufficient is not the right word there, but I don't know in context of the other things in this section if it all fully works.
Sure.
Is there an opportunity, I think it seems like there's consensus to at least address and clarify the situation, whether or not the words on the page are the correct ones to actually accomplish that, I think it's a different question, and I think we've asked a lot of our legislative counsel in the last few weeks, so understandably, maybe we need more time on this section, could we take a straw poll to support the intent of this section, and then over the next couple days, as there's a little bit more time, we come back to specific language, or is this a we need to decide today, this language is in or out? Or should we workshop it? I don't
We
know, that's
We
very.
have our own course. My suggestion maybe to help it would be to keep it in because it keeps the issue in front of
Okay.
us. Clarifying, I think everyone agrees that clearer is more helpful to everyone downstream of everything is right. So if this, I don't know, we quite know whether or not this accomplishes what we like. So let's look for more resources to help us nail this down. We do have some time to go for, but meanwhile, keep it in so it's alive. Just for division of labor, can you be a point person on trying to chase down who we should hear from in order to get further clarification? I'm just trying to think of the right practitioners.
Well, sorry, are we voting this today?
No, we have further amendments, like with the things that we're gonna go through after this.
Okay.
The bill hasn't come out of finance yet.
I'm actually very,
Very confusing.
I'm okay. My time. Okay.
Okay.
But we're gonna keep it in so that you have time.
Yeah, sure, so I'll find who can speak for that.
Please.
Mm-hmm, yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Next month, thank you. All right, so let's go on to the. Well, there's another provision to page 5 lines 11.
The only things that are changed are the things that are highlighted.
Oh, okay,
We read, like, just in,
that's just carried over. Thank you. Fourth,
is tandem parking.
okay, so this was the shall allow, so it's municipalities will choose for themselves.
And I know we did consensus on the other two subsections in there, which was limiting their ability to regulate parking space size. And their ability to regulate non-conforming parking spaces being legacy in to count towards parking spots. I would still put out there that I think that those are unnecessary limitations on a municipality's authority when it comes to their ability to plan how parking looks in their communities. But I respect if that is not something this committee would like to support for good.
So for the time being, how about we leave this vision in, right?
But if anyone on the Heartland Planning Commission asks.
And, yeah, or another call, if you work on that, I think if you wanna, think about this, talk with other people, and maybe, suggest a witness, that we will take testimony from, who could do that, but. So.
On the other two subsections, but we're, okay.
Kind of like this,
Okay.
where we can keep things cooking off the page and.
I would recommend
See if we
Ted
can-
Brady from Vermont League of Cities and Towns can be my suggestion on that, those two sub-points, but if you're looking for someone who's more close to the ground rather than an advocate, I'm also happy to try to find someone of that
So-
nature.
I have Mr. Brady, I've told this twice now, so, and if you could maybe look at that more local, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so fifth. Oh, so I think we were all fine on the fourth instance. Fifth instance, striking out BB and inserting page 5.
Your Honor.
So this is the exemption for accessory dwelling units. So this is the language that was proposed by the NRB yesterday, so. Until July 1, 2029, No permanent or permanent amendment is required for the construction of improvements for an accessory dwelling unit as defined in 6001. Housing units constructed pursuant to this subdivision shall not count towards the total units constructed in other tier areas. So first, what dates do you want to go with? Do you want to go with 2027? This 2029? This is a sunset provision.
I think we've been aligning dates on 27.
Okay.
Oh, I see that. So, and when we say we're aligning it, the interim exemptions go to 2029.
Do they?
No.
Who's interim exemption?
Oh, maybe I.
Jackson.
They got 2027?
Yeah, they're 2027.
Oh, okay, then I guess this should be 2027. Okay,
I mean, I think that's just,
I had not remembered.
well, it's a little hard to keep track of.
I mean, we're reviewing another bill that may have used 2029.
Yes, indeed we did.
So I think, that's a discussion to come.
Okay,
And what actually makes sense in terms of what pieces of work are completed, so there's an orderly transition.
So then that sentence that's being added says that housing units constructed, so the accessory dwelling unit shall not count towards the total units constructed in other tier areas.
Yeah, so do you have anything you'd like to say about in other tier areas, like how, for one thing, does that work? Even if that's like our concept.
I mean, I don't think it works for the interim,
Right.
because they haven't been established. I think. I don't know if this helps. I actually think, well, I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Gill, you wanna?
Yeah, Pete Gill, Executive Director from the Natural Resources Board. I'll say that certainly open to changes in language there. I think the intent or the idea was just to make sure that it's clear that if housing would, if you have units that are created as ADUs, that they would not trigger for other areas when the tiers are set up, or other unit counts, if it was, within 5 miles, 5 years, in under existing legislation.
thank you. I feel like there are two problems that we're trying to solve. One is, do the housing units, so there's before and after the tiers are established, right? And after they're established, this question remains of what do you do in one tier? Does that affect what you do just across the board or in a different tier? And I feel like this addresses that, but should be after the transition. And then up until that time, there are no tiers. It's just these designated areas plus the buffer. So maybe we want to have the same sentiment apply. We should just, instead of saying in other tier areas, make up until 2027 or whatever, it should be outside of the exempted areas. This
Right.
makes sense. And I'm not happy to discuss the content of that. I'm just trying to identify that there are two things we're trying to solve here, and it doesn't make sense to match before the transition with tier areas in the same paragraph.
So I think yesterday, to follow up on that, there was the sentiment I sensed was the committee said, let's not count ADUs when you're doing jurisdiction trigger counts. And then I think the question is how you express that in law for the near term and for the long term, knowing long term, we can make a decision, but what we really need to address is what's going on in the next, whatever it is, 3 years or 7 years. So if you were. Does that help you as a drafter on behalf of this committee to think about how you might reshape this language?
So
General Mutz?
well, what I heard you say is not what I thought I heard you say yesterday, so I think I need you to, it's, you don't want ADUs to count towards any unit count?
For a jurisdiction trigger. I mean, I thought that was the question, like the 9 units that now has 1 ADU and becomes jurisdictional under current law. Or could be argued to become jurisdictional. And
Okay, so
my
it's-
sentiment was, my sense of the sentiment of the committee was. No, we don't want to do that, like we already, some amount of development's already happened, let the ADUs happen and don't let them. Throw someone into Act 250 just because they had an EDU.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk through like, it's unlikely we're gonna end up with the multiplier effect that I think we had discussed.
We had the 9 plus 18 sort of maxed out
We're pretty-
area.
But especially with the limit of the owner occupied.
Sure.
I think there are, but they're not putting out like a row of cabins, they count as accessory dwellings.
I don't. Mr. Meeker can speak for council.
No, I don't, that would not be an accessory dwelling unit situation where somebody does like a row of cabins that they're renting out seasonally. That would not be an accessory.
There's a provision, like the owner has to live in the residence.
Yeah.
The residence can't be more than duplex, in fact, right?
It's single family.
Single family. Oh, I'm sorry, okay, thrown off, there's a. Bristol example that was outside that rule, okay. Is that, okay, there Watson?
I think one way to fix this, at least as far as what I'm seeing, is just replace the word tier areas with, or other tier areas with exempted areas. Or
I don't think you, if your only intent is to not have it count, I don't think you need to do anything else, except for maybe straight to, you might not even need that next sentence,
okay.
but. If that's your only intent. Sure. But we can straighten to your areas.
Still units.
The,
Yeah, okay. Just end it after units.
so. The reason that qualifier had been added in the other exemptions is because those other exemptions were specific to designated areas. And so that is a distinction. This is anywhere.
No, I see.
Oh, I see. It's not just in those areas. Thank you.
Right. So can you just say that again, where was the designated area or boundary on provision again?
It's in the other housing exemptions. The section, they're not on this page.
So designated areas plus boundary, like our designated area plus half mile. Zone area, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, but I would ask the NRB to comment on if they think that's necessary, not the second sentence.
Do you think the second sentence is necessary? The way that it was drafted was relatively quickly. So it probably now understanding where the committee's intent is, we can certainly work with council to come up with something that works there. I think, again, our concern is that understanding what the committee's intent is to make sure that it's clear to the district coordinators when they're applying this, that the unit counts for ADUs doesn't get applied to either the future tiers when those become available, and they're not going back and looking 5 years back and seeing an ADU that was built and adding that onto their unit count. And that it's not being used to count for other buildings that are, or other units during the, interval period as well.
So can we rewrite this to be more specifically about then that we're not using these, they're not coming towards jurisdictional triggers, and that we'll stick with the designated areas that we define them as the sort of consistent with our designated areas plus half mile. That's what I'm.
So this language is not exclusive to that.
It's not in what we want it to be.
Well, I'm just, let me ask that as a question, should, we've been trying to do is more in the expanded area, designated areas. I'm open to hearing it, they shouldn't count anywhere, or being a little more conservative or constrained, we'd say they don't count in the expanded designated area.
Personally, I would be in favor of us resolving the language. But not, I think that would change the intent. I mean, I would hope that people would put ADUs on in places that already have existing homes. I mean, I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, I understand your density point and kind of limiting that, but a lot of people put ADUs on in very rural parts of our state, and that's a benefit because you're having a house there next to another house versus a house down the street, you know, because there's less of that separation.
Sure.
So I would hope that we wouldn't limit it just to those designated areas because of that, but I understand your where your brain is going. But I do think that would change the intent.
Sure. So let's call this a rural friendly, rural forward provision, and ADUs don't count towards jurisdictional triggers anywhere in the next round.
Which I think is how it is now. I say.
Yeah, I'll check
But
it
not
out.
with the-
So is that sufficient for a rewrite? Okay, then, and we did change 29 to 27 in that, thank you. Sixth instance,
This is the definition that the NRB proposed for accessory dwelling unit. So it is similar to the definition in Title 24, it is not identical, so it's a distinct unit. This is on page 6, that's clearly scored into a single family owner occupied dwelling. In Title 24, it's owner occupied lot. And has facilities and provisions for independent living, so this is all the same. Property has sufficient wastewater capacity, not exceed 30% of habitable floor area or 900 square feet. And the unit is located within or pertinent to a single family dwelling. Whether it's existing or new.
existing or new was, or new was, I think, article I brought yesterday, any. So will this definition live elsewhere as well? I'm just wondering about, we're ending up with 2 and,
You are ending up with 2.
yeah, we can see that's nice. Ms. Dimitri, then Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Catherine Dimitrick, Northwest Regional Planning. As your council has indicated, this is a little bit different, and I think it's a distinction that could be, there's a distinction that could be problematic where Title 24, like 117 on the municipal side, the language is flexible to allow the owner occupied person to be either in the accessory dwelling unit or in the single family dwelling, and I'm not sure that this language provides that same flexibility. And I think that's a potential conflict that would be problematic down the road.
And so, is it that? Like lines 1 and 2?
It's the word that I highlighted.
Yes. I'm supporting the highlight.
Yeah. So we got that.
Okay,
It's owner occupied lot in the other statute.
right, so the owner's there. Yeah, anecdotes are next exactly data, but I know people who have, they say, oh, my kids are all gone. I'm building the ADUs, I'm moving into the ADU, now my bigger house, I don't need, it's gonna be the rental. So much.
So you don't like the dwelling there? That would.
That was for you.
That's a policy question, yes, so I will answer it, so yes, I don't like that, I
You
don't like.
prefer it as well.
Yes, yes, I think consistency across the two is pretty crucial, so.
I'm happy to jump in here too. I mean, I agree with consistency across. I think the change was not intended to have other implications there. So I appreciate that. I think it was just that dwelling is one of our defined terms in our rules and was utilizing that rather than lot, but understand if there's implications, consistency is probably a good thing in both definitions.
So I personally, I would be I'm always inclined towards harmonizing definitions, not having, and when it at least to the degree it makes sense. Mr. Weiss.
Well, thank you. Thomas Weiss, civil engineer, resident of Montpelier. I'm concerned that the definition brings in a criterion into the definition. The criterion is the property has sufficient wastewater capacity in A. And that to me is covered by criterion 1, which has to do with water pollutions, and criterion 1C, which has to do with water conservation. And I think that needs to be resolved, and I acknowledge that if that comes out here, then that would be different than the definition in the Title 24, Chapter 117. But I also believe that this definition is different because it adds C, which I don't believe is in the Title 24, Chapter 117 definition.
So on part A, provision A, property has sufficient wastewater capacity. If you're not going to be reviewed under Act 250, then does this? I know you're a very careful thinker. Do we not want to say something about sufficient wastewater capacity because we're not actually going to be triggered in Act 250, so that those criteria aren't going to be evaluated relative to this ADU that we're talking about?
I hear your question. I'm thinking about it. The scope of the ADU exemption has been in flux for a while. And I think that I hear what you're saying, but
Well, how about
I guess if it stays that way, it might be okay, but I don't see it being guaranteed as ADUs being exempt everywhere.
Sure. Well, so how about for the moment, I'll suggest we leave it and keep thinking about, you're good at facing down hypothetical, so.
But the other part is that if there is a larger project that has a lot of ADUs in it, then there would be, I haven't thought it through carefully.
Okay.
So I'll take your suggestion under it.
Okay. Sub C, was that in 117?
Yes, it's in 4412.
Okay. So, could we agree then to go back to WAP, so we harmonize those two, and is there an unintended consequence that we're not foreseeing by returning to lot, really lets the owner choose whether to live in the house or the ADU? Okay, so I'm here, good to go. So, a question pending.
Subsidy on page.
6.
We are on page 6.
Yeah, so
We,
located within the book, okay.
yeah,
So
the owner of occupied dwelling, then you have to live in the big house, not the ADU. Yes. And I,
What does A mean, property has sufficient wastewater capacity?
Who would evaluate that condition? A municipality or? Who does that connect with the definition? So. Mr. Gillis, do you end up evaluating that condition, a property with sufficient wastewater capacity routinely, or are you, with this, you come at it through criterion one or one C?
Or one B.
Or B?
Yeah. Sorry, I might not be following your question completely, but it is one of the criteria.
Well, I think in a way,
So can I step back?
yeah,
Currently, ADU is not a concept under Act 250. It is just under municipal law. The municipality has to allow them. They can regulate them through their land use permit. So municipalities that go through land use permitting may evaluate this. The NRB is not currently doing this.
We don't consent to them right now. They could be evaluated, if this additional unit created enough units to trigger jurisdiction.
okay, so now unfortunately I'm getting a little confused, and that is. This is a new definition for Act 250, yeah?
Yes.
We're adding to 6001, it's up 50. Why do we need such a definition in Act 250 if you already have a criteria to evaluate things, but sufficiency of water and waste and potable. Does that make my question?
Can you get it again, so I was getting other people.
I get why a municipality would do this, because they're not you guys, they don't have 1 through 10 and the water criteria, so we're creating a municipal law, a test for whether or not something's advisable. You already have all the tests and criteria 1 through 10, so I'm asking myself why you would have a definition that starts to build in tests that aren't already covered by the body or the criteria ones with other fault.
Yeah, I think in terms of our review of, projects, we would look at those, and we would utilize the same, pieces that the municipality would be using in terms of, A&R wastewater permits and things like that, in terms of evaluating, whether that's acceptable. So whether that was needed here, I guess is kind of where.
Council, I see the wheels turning, do you have
So,
something to share? with
well, so this is, they copied the definition from Title 24.
Yep.
What's happening in Title 24 is sort of inherently different than what's happening in Act 250. So you're raising an interesting question. The municipalities can't prohibit it. That doesn't mean that they are exempt necessarily. So there is some review. But also it's interesting that it is a criterion that's being addressed here, but you do set standards by which a project would be evaluated to be exempt. That does happen sometimes in the jurisdictional opinion, so. It is interesting that it's a criterion, I haven't thought through all that. But you can set parameters around something when you are exempting it.
Okay. So leaving that aside, what's the test of sufficiency that someone's going to apply this? I mean, how is something to determine whether or not you get to check the box for A?
Well, as with all other Act 250 applications and exemptions, an applicant has to come forward and say, we have sufficient water. What the actual evidence form will take, I don't know off the top of my head, but. We have a septic system, it holds blank.
Yeah, we haven't done this before, because this is, yeah, again, something a creature of municipal law, but it is very similar to what we do under 1B, so I would assume that, you know, in terms of a jurisdictional opinion and our wastewater permit or such will be sufficient.
So what does it mean? Mr. Chair,
The test of sufficiency, so how do you, Mr. Gill, if you could fill us in on how procedurally you do that already? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so under 1B, we would look to see if the applicant has a wastewater permit from the Agency of Natural Resources, and that would provide a presumption of compliance with that Act 50 criteria. This is, as it's been pointed out, this is a little bit different because we're looking at this from a jurisdictional perspective, but I would imagine that it would be corollary to that.
That is the process that happens now at the municipal level. They rely on the Agency of Natural Resources wastewater permit or a certification that one isn't needed in order to meet that criteria.
so. We have, later in this list, we have, it's, the place has to have a kitchen. And the same questions we arise, what does it mean? That the place has to have a kitchen, and we're not. Apparently, the answer is, we don't know what it means, but if you got a permit. Regardless of whether perhaps you got it or didn't, it qualifies.
Well, okay, so we'll get to kitchens, but so if you're, as I understand your question is, what does it mean to qualify a place to say that it has sufficient wastewater capacity? We're hearing from the NRB and both we work with the municipal level that your wastewater permit is that demonstrates sufficient capacity. You can't get a permit unless there is sufficient. And that's how you check the box. So is there,
Well, I would check the box and flush the toilet. And find out where it went. But,
are you talking about CSOs? Is that where we were going or Black
No, I'm-
Swamp? What?
just, I don't know where I'm going, I wanna know what it means to have sufficient wastewater capacity.
To have sufficient wastewater capacity means you've been permitted. To have, again, you have to get, I think it's normally by. I don't remember the formula, there's things like how many bedrooms we have. Are, I think that's the wastewater. Depending on how many bedrooms you have to process water, dumps and soft things. So there's, I think there's something like a well-established way of getting permits, wastewater permits. So we are a little past, I'm gonna say for the time being, do you want to pursue this? I don't know what else we can, what other question we need to answer. Honestly,
Okay, well, like. In the yellow language down the page, it says. Shall be equipped with a kitchen.
okay,
And
Separate topic.
yeah,
I know it's a separate topic, it's a similar challenge, and I Googled kitchen to find out,
you, okay, so I'm gonna roll this back in, that's the 7th instance of amendment, and we're on the
Oh.
6th.
But
So
the
let's-
6th instance of amendment does talk about food preparation and sanitation. 6, what we're talking about right now. Yeah, so these are required to be habitable units, like a habitable dwelling, so that does require. Food preparation, sleeping, food preparation and sanitation.
She's an ADU. Yeah, but this, okay, but here.
It's a livable space, I think.
Actually,
It's kind of like,
thank you, Mr. Chair. So it sounds like we're on the 6th Amendment, but kind of blending in a conversation on the 7th Amendment, which is But I'm wondering, so my question is. Are we good with the Sixth Amendment and we are now progressing on to the seventh, or are we taking a straw poll on the Sixth Amendment?
Yeah.
Or did we, and I apologize for being out of the room.
No, we've been chasing down the efficient wastewater, because I see question, I'm feeling, I got to a place of comfort on it. I would like to straw poll, are people satisfied with including the sixth instance amendment in our draft?
With the change to lots.
Yes, thank you, with a change to law.
And in the sixth proposal amendment, there's a requirement to be equipped with a kitchen. Do we know what that means?
Oh, that's the seven, is that, that's
That's
yeah.
So.
Thank you.
That's where we're getting, no, you're fine, that's where we're getting,
Thank you.
it's not highlighted, so like.
So it's, and also on the prior page, it was 2020 that had a change in that.
We're gonna make some multiple changes.
Yeah, so. Right, this jurisdiction trigger, okay, so. Although those satisfied with looking at an next draft of sixth instance of amendment. And not needing further discussion at this moment, please say aye if you're ready to move up.
Aye.
Aye. So we have 4 ayes, so. We have gone longer than I thought to finish this. Let's pause. And take till 10 of. So 12 minutes-ish, and we'll pick back up on the 7th instance of amendment. But I would also make sure we get through anything that's in the in basket,
I'll try it.
from our punch list. I have a couple things, and I don't think they're as complicated as this. Things